This morning, Nigerians were woken to a reshuffling in the NNPC board as Mele Kolo Kyari, the longest-serving group managing director of NNPC, was laid off by the president. To replace him, we have Bayo Ojulari, a former CEO of Shell Nigeria Exploration and Production Company. The chairman and other members of the board were also changed. The chairman, Mr. Pius Akinyelure, was changed. Welcome to Economy and Markets, where we give you a comprehensive breakdown of market and economic activities. I'm your host, David Olujimi. Mele Kolo Kyari has ended his stint as the CEO and Group Managing Director of NNPC. A tenure which started in July 2019 has come to end in April 2025. Adedapo Segun, the Chief Financial Officer, retained his position. However, Letum, Mitee, Kashim, Tumsah, Ghali, Mohammed, Almustapha, Aliyu, David Ogbodo, Eunice and Nicholas Agbo, the former board members of the NNPC Limited, will now be replaced by Bello, Rabiu, who is from the northwest, Yusuf, Usman from the northeast, Babs, Omotowa, the north central representative, Austine, Avuru, David Ige, and Henry Obih from the southeast. Lydia, Shehu, Jafiya will maintain her role as the Ministry of Finance representative, while Aminu Said Ahmed will step in as the Ministry of Petroleum Resources representative. So before we go on the show, let's take a look at the profile of the board members of NNPC. We're starting from the new CEO slash Group Managing Director, Bayo Ojulari. Bayo Ojulari is an engineer with a first degree in mechanical engineering from the Bello University, Zaria. He has over 34 years of experience in the oil and gas sector, with 24 of those years spent in Shell. He was the managing director of SNEPCO, which is Shell Nigeria Exploration and Production Company, between 2015 and 2021. Essentially, SNEPCO is the subsidiary of Shell that controls its deepwater assets in Nigeria. Under Ojulari, SNEPCO increased its production volume by 20%, with the Bonga oil fields being a significant asset for the company. Recently, we heard of the $5 billion investment into the Bonga deepwater project by SNEPCO. Ojulari is not the only Shell alumni on that new board. We have Babs Omotowa, who will serve on the board as the North Central representative. Babs Omotowa is an indigene of Kogi State. He was the former MD/CEO of Nigeria LNG, NLNG, between 2011 and 2016. He also served as the Vice President of Shell Global, basically in an oil and gas career that spanned over 26 years. Presently, he's a board member at Stanbic IBTC Holdings after serving as a board member at Seplat Energy and CAP PLC, that's Chemical and Allied Products PLC. Another oil veteran is on the board, Austine Avuru, the co-founder and former CEO of Seplat, is on the board. He is the South-South representative on the board. We know that Austine Avuru is from Delta State. Austine has over 40 years of experience in the oil industry. He started his oil and gas career in NNPC before moving to the private sector. In 2002, he founded Platform Petroleum, and in 2010, he founded Seplat. He led Seplat till 2020, and he had to exit that position. David Ige, who will be the Southwest representative, is another Shell alumni. He started his career as a reservoir engineer with Shell. So basically, we have three of these board members being former workers with Shell. He started his career as a reservoir engineer with Shell in 1993 before moving to the UK, where he obtained his PhD and continued his work with Shell in Aberdeen, Scotland. He left Shell, came back to Nigeria, and he became a group executive director at NNPC. He was a group executive director at NNPC between 2005 and 2015. David is a graduate of mechanical engineering from the University of Lagos. He is also a gas aficionado. He is the founder and CEO of Gas Invest Limited, a company that he founded in 2016 after his role as the GED at NNPC. Then we have Henry Obih, who is the Southeast representative on the board. Henry Obih worked with ExxonMobil in Nigeria, in the UK, and in Europe for more than 20 years. Then he left as an executive director with ExxonMobil after 22 years of working with that company. Currently, he serves on the board of NLNG, and he also served as a chief operating officer with NNPC until 2019. He is a mechanical engineering graduate from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, with an MBA from the University of Bradford. Then, the Northwest representative, Bello Rabiu, is presently an independent non-executive director with Seplat. He is a graduate of chemistry from the Ahmadu Bello University and another oil and gas veteran. He worked with NNPC for 28 years before retiring. Just like the others before him, he was also a group executive director in the NNPC. He was in charge of NNPC's upstream business unit. Then we have Yusuf Usman, who was also a group executive director with NNPC. He started his career also, like the others, with Shell before joining NNPC in 1993. Before retirement, he was in charge of NNPC's gas and power unit. On the show this morning, we have Dipo Oladeyinde, who is Business Day's senior energy analyst on the show. Good morning, Dipo.
And good to be here once again. Good to be back here.
So basically, what do you make of this rejig? What do you think? Just your general assessment of everything, of the entire thing.
We all saw it coming, really. The appointment was the rejiggling of NNPC was long overdue. Many people expected it before now, and February, the first week of February, I think February 3rd, was supposed to be Mele Kyari's 60th birthday, which means he was supposed to be out of public service, but we saw the presidency being silent on that matter. So, I mean, Kyari was the longest serving group CEO of NNPC, so sooner or later he was expected to leave the scene. And I think the question was not whether he would be leaving, but who was going to be replacing him. And now we have somebody else replacing him. So I think it's a welcome development and a brilliant initiative, in my view.
Okay. So what do you make of Kyari's tenure as NNPC CEO? So the thing here is with Kyari became like a public face. It was the longest serving. People have one or two things to say. A lot happened over the 6 years or almost 6 years he was in charge. What do you make of his tenure as the CEO?
Okay, so under Kyari, I mean, we have three different phases. There's the good, there's the bad, and the ugly. So we'll start from the good part. The good part is, so under Kyari, NNPC they were more transparent. Yes. For the first time, we saw an audited report of NNPC's financial books, and which, I mean, was a brilliant initiative. We also saw they started releasing monthly operational reports of how much NNPC was paying to FAC on a monthly basis, which was something that was not public before. So we saw a bit of transparency under Kyari. Again, maybe a little later than never, the refinery, so much talks about rehabilitating the refinery, so much talk about them ever coming back on stream, but under him, we saw a bit of what looks like the resurgence of the refinery. But that's pretty much the good part. So let's go to the bad part. The bad part was subsidy was a big problem under Kyari's administration. So at some point, we were paying, subsidy was little about 500 million naira. And then it jumped to over 1 billion, and now we are doing trillion. At some point, we were paying trillion naira subsidy before the Tinubu administration removed everything completely. Another bad part for Kyari was Nigeria's petrol consumption was unknown. It's difficult to plan when we don't even have official data of what the actual...
So basically, transparency was in the good and in the bad.
Yes, so transparency was in the good and the bad. So in the bad, there was no official figure of what the true consumption pattern of Nigeria's petrol was, which was a big indictment on, because NNPC, yes, they are a company, but then they are also a regulator as well. They have their role they play in terms of liaising with either the Nigerian Ministry Downstream Regulatory Commission or Nigerian Upstream Commission as well. So all of this, and then the ugly part is we saw instances where briefcase companies were giving deep offshore contracts, which shouldn't be. We saw there were little or no transparency around oil blocks, how a little or known company who end up winning all contracts to deliver things they have little or no capacity to do, to handle. We saw corruption as well, where money changed hands in terms of handling certain things. And I mean, all of these are allegations anyway. But what we've seen is there was little or low FDI into the oil and gas sector was not
dropped
drastically, not like it used to be before. So again, there's the good part. It depends on the side of the angle you look at it. Okay. So Kyari fans will tell you, yes, NNPC became more transparent.
We can also look at it from the side of during his tenure, PIA came in.
Yes, he can also get that credit as well. That the PIA was
the commercialization of NNPC.
So although the PIA is more of a legislative act, not really an executive act or something that's originated from his office. But of course, he played his role as well. And then, of course, the commercialization of. So again, depending on the side you are sitting on, you'll pick which side you want to look at Kyari from.
Okay, so now let's look at the new board. When you look at it, the profile I read, we see this man with over, when you want to calculate it cumulatively, we're looking at over 200 and almost 240 years collective experience working in the oil and gas sector. In the oil, we have the former CEO of NLNG, we have the former CEO of Seplat, we have the former CEO of Snepco, we have and we now have former executive directors with ExxonMobil, not just in Nigeria, even in across the world. So how do you think it will fare for the NNPC's future right now? Are we looking at a company that's going to be more commercial interest driven, or are we looking at a company who is going to continue on the trend of let's just keep the boat steady in the Nigerian oil sector? What direction do you see the NNPC going now?
Okay, so in the history of Nigeria's oil and gas sector, this is the first time we are seeing square pegs in square holes. Now, you get to meet a Bayo Ojulari who have experience working with Shell. Now, in time past, what we do have is the people who end up at NNPC, apart from maybe an Ibe Kachuku that was formerly ExxonMobil, the likes of Avuru, the likes of Ibe Kyari, they are basically NNPC's guys. So they grew up through the ranks at NNPC. They were probably a technician there, a director there. So they would enter NNPC pretty much like a graduate training thing, and then they grew up all through the ranks.
Yes.
And so people have argued that, look, you need to bring outsiders. You need to bring somebody with international experience to come run NNPC. And there we have a Bayo Ojulari. So if given the free hand to operate, if there are no political interference, I think the outlook is positive because I'll give an instance. When a certain Yewande Sadiku was in charge of Nigerian investment promotion, a lot of international companies were willing to talk to Nigeria, not necessarily because they believe in the product, but they believe in the person behind the product. Yes, okay. So you have a Bayo Ojulari who wants to manage Snepco. At one point in Nigeria's oil and gas industry, Snepco was single-handedly delivering 1 million barrels to Nigeria's oil and gas sector. Single-handedly. So if a man who has managed a company that was single-handedly delivering 1 million barrels, you would expect the kind of outlook you would expect for NNPC. You would expect increased production, most especially from our JVs, that a lot of people have complained that some of them were underperforming before, and we've not seen relative improvements. So you see the improved production capacity from these JVs, because sometimes majority of the things affecting our JVs are not technical things. Some of them are commercial. It's about what kind of business agreements are you entering into? Who are your JV partners? Are they people with
capital operating costs and all of this?
Yeah, exactly. So what's the operating capacity or the antecedent of your partners in these JVs? And then there's so much talks about idle oil fields. Nigeria's close to 40-50% of Nigeria's oil field idle, not producing anything, stuck at, probably because commercial negotiations did not move beyond the boardroom to the operating rooms and all of that. So with these fresh guys who are coming in, and then the chairman of the board is Musa Kida. Musa Kida worked many years at Total Energies as well. Total Energy is probably one of the biggest IOCs in terms of global operations as well. Yes. So, I mean, among all the IOCs, Total Energy, so when you look at tech, they're introducing a lot of technologies into their operations, in their global operations. So you'd expect that that kind of transition would also move into Nigeria's oil and gas. So I think the outlook is positive, again, if given the free hand to do whatever. And then there's an Austine Avuru on the board as well. Austine Avuru, Seplat, you can't talk about Seplat's story and not talk about Austine Avuru.
Impossible.
Perfect understanding of the local scene. He knows how to operate. He has a perfect understanding of onshore assets, all of which can be quite troublesome for the international guys because they don't have an understanding of the local market. But Austine Avuru is that guy that will put in that understanding. So again, the outlook is impressive. A lot of contentious issues for them, and again, the time will tell how they would perform going forward.
So one question I have is, what are the specific issues you think that Nigerians or people who are watching the oil and gas space will be looking out? What are those pointed issues?
Oh, okay.
Pointing issues that
up from the top of my, I can list 7 top of my head. So there is the AKK pipeline.
Okay.
Now the AKK pipeline also have been commissioned first quarter 2025. Mele Kyari missed that deadline after he himself announced
that. I don't think they're up to 50% done on that.
Exactly. So the AKK pipeline is there. That project is a big deal in terms of achieving this decade of gas dream we've talked about for so long. There is the Naira for crude deal as well with Dangote as well. That's a very topical issue that Ojulari would have to decide what amount of crude would NNPC need to supply the refinery. There is also the issue about attracting FDI into the oil and gas sector. In 2014, at some point, Nigeria was, the oil and gas alone was attracting close to about $20 billion alone. So now we barely can even attract $1 million.
So recently I've been seeing that I think it was Total that wants to invest $30 billion in Mozambique or so.
Yeah, Total is also taking $6 billion to Angola as well.
Imagine.
So you are looking at investments. That's the third one. You are looking at the issue of boosting idle oil fields, raising oil production. So one of the targets Tinubu has given them as well is to scale up oil production to at least 2.5 to, the goal is to get to 4, but let's steady 2.5. So you have to improve production to 2.5. Then there is also a contentious issue of what to do with the refinery. A lot of people have argued that the government have no business running the refinery, that those refineries should have been sold. And Kyari was insisting that those refineries should be back on stream. That's also a very contentious issue. Will you sell those refineries or would you keep them on? Another major issue is this NNPC obsession with searching for crude in the north. Under Buhari's administration, the government pumped in billions of dollars looking for oil in the north. And we don't have...
Right now we have an OPL that I don't think will ever become an OMF.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get commercial quantity there. So that's, all those talks would, this Ojulari would have to sit down and prioritize. So what do I have limited dollars. Will I go on a wild goose chase, or will I put my money where my mouth is?
For someone like Ojulari, who is more of a deep water person, I can imagine looking for oil in the desert. It's going to be
so again, which is why I said this is a round, a square peg
in a
square hole. So you have oil and gas experts who understands what it means to the economics of drilling for oil. These are people with international background who have worked with. So you have diversity as well. You have a Total there, you have a Shell there, you have ExxonMobil there, you have a former CEO of NLNG there as well. So all of these people bring their skills and their technical capability together to deliver value.
So lastly, before the talks of NNPC going public, how do you see it faring under these guys?
So again, when you go public, the thing about going public is you are not the biggest fish in the water. Yes. You have other companies as well. There's Aramco, there's Petrogas, there's, so when you are going public, what are you offering to investors? Are you offering them value for money? Beyond, again, time have moved beyond I have this in my reserve. People don't care about your reserve anymore. They care about what you can do. Can you deliver? Can you, if they are bringing their investments in, can they get it out?
So
They talk
this
about
this what you raise now is something that has been on my, because when I heard that NNPCs are the last stage of an IPO, first thing that came to head is we literally have like, I don't know, thousands, hundreds of, is it hundreds or tens of what do we call them now, depots across the country, thousands of kilometers of petroleum product pipelines that don't work. We have oil fields not
Mhm,
producing.
mhm.
We have NNPC retail that is probably posting losses year after year.
So again, David, this is beyond your before. What NBC tell investors is, look, I have 36 million barrels in my reserve. I have the world have moved beyond reserve. Investors are looking at value for money. Investors are looking at your total assets. What
Yes.
percentage of your total assets can you bring to the table is delivering? Are you operating? Can 90% of your total asset deliver? If they can't, then and then ease of doing business. We've talked about corruption in Nigeria's oil and gas. So sometime around last year, Business Day did a story where we looked at operating. So if you are bringing your money in Nigerian oil and gas sector, you are interacting with at least 20 regulators. In Namibia, you are basically doing business with just two. In Angola, you are dealing with two, max three. In other countries, you are dealing with just one or two. In Nigeria, you are dealing with all sorts of
You're
departments,
dealing with
all sorts
NUBRC,
of people. So they need to
SCMDB.
look at ease of doing business in Nigeria's oil and gas sector, make the sector conducive for investment to thrive, and then get it up and running as fast as possible.
Okay, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Dipo Oladin, the senior energy analyst at Business Day. To our viewers, thank you for watching Economy and Markets on Business Day TV. We'll see you again on Friday.